All right. Good morning, everyone. Welcome to Meet the Masters. Tim Watson here, joined by Master Dan Farrelly. Good morning, sir.
Good morning. How are you?
I'm great, man. Just sitting here. I got the window open. It's like 60 degrees here in Delaware, which is nice. And yeah, just enjoying the morning by myself. How about you, man?
I'm just got into the studio. I figured I'd come in here to do this one. Maybe let people see the new studio a little bit in the background with the giant fan, which turned out to be not as big as we had hoped when they said it was a giant fan. But
It's still pretty big. I just noticed it. Still
yeah.
pretty large considering for the, you don't have a, I've seen the ones that they call the big fan. And yeah, I don't know if you'd blow everyone away if you had one of those.
This is one that brand, but when they advertise it with that name, you expect it to be, and it was like, oh, okay, it's 6 foot in diameter, so it is pretty big. But if we had much bigger, we'd be knocking the pictures off the wall.
That's right. So I saw the other day that December 14th was when we did the interview talking about like the Indiegogo for Beaudoin Academy last year. So It's crazy. It's a year later. So maybe give us an update on everything that's been going on at the Academy.
Yeah. So the Indiegogo started just, I think we technically started just after Grandmaster's birthday, or just before his birthday, in December last year, and we ran it for as long as they would let us, for 2 months, and it ended up just going past the date he passed. And following that, we got in here and we started doing a bunch of renovations that we kind of needed. The building needed a new roof. There was wiring. There was all kinds of stuff that needed to just get done. There was a giant old water heater at one point. In Connecticut, all martial arts schools had to be classified as health spas. So there was a shower in the corner that hadn't been used in 30 years and stuff like that. So we did a lot of renovations to the space to really freshen up. We put a new coat of paint on it. We expanded it a little bit, and that took us into about June. And then in June, we reopened officially, and we started with new students, and we've been running ever since. And we got a good group of students. We had our test the other day, actually on Grandmaster's birthday on the 4th, and we had our first group of students that we got from, it started in June. They got the group of white belts, got their orange belts. So, progress. I think there's about 7 or 8 of them that got their orange belts. So that was pretty exciting. There's about 5 or 6 behind them that got their 9th cups. So we're starting to fill in that gap. We have some beginners, we have all of our black belts that stuck around, and there's like 4 or 5 green, brown belts, red belts. They're all in the middle that either kind of stuck with us or came back immediately as soon as we reopened. So, but everyone's pretty excited.
Yeah, it's funny how you get that where you'll have like 4 white belts, an orange belt, a brown belt, and then like 8 black belts.
Yeah.
You get the whole rainbow. We got some people saying hello. Your screen is shaking a little bit. Are you holding your?
No, I'm on a folding table. I was leaning on it, so I'm
gotcha.
The folding table.
If anyone's motion sick, I don't want anyone. So got a couple of people saying hello. Lindsay Dudgeon says afternoon from a chilly 35 degrees in Great Britain.
Oof.
Sorry to hear that, ma'am. Good morning from Pam Russell, Tim Wagner, and Master McCarty says, tell Master Dan I have not forgotten him with that video.
And and thank you, Master McCarty. And I just finished redoing and editing a DVD that I got sent to him. I'm putting together a DVD. After Grandmaster passed, I know I've told you this. I got to get to his house and get a bunch of books and materials, and that'll actually kind of lead into some of our discussion a little that I think you and I are going to talk about a little later. Books, magazines, paperwork, history, all that kind of stuff from his house. And one of the things I found was there was these just VHS tapes that just said like forms and weapons, and I'm like, okay, I threw them in the bag of stuff, and I eventually looked at them, and it was Grandmaster Beaudoin doing all of the World Tongue Sudo forms from like 1992, 1992, 91, 92 timeframe. In the studio here doing, starting at Seigen and Ilbu, going all the way up through Oship Sabo, because I don't think we didn't have Unsu and we didn't have Siggy John Kwan at the time. And then all the weapons forms as well, except the cane and the spear, because again, I don't think those had been officially pulled in at that point. And a couple additional staff forms. But so I took those, I've converted them to digital, and I'm working on putting a DVD of all of those together, and it's really pretty nice because it's a front view and a side view.
Oh, okay.
Of him doing the form, so it's not just like a straight on. There's from the front and then kind of the side, so you get multiple angles of him doing the same form. And it was always something we had talked about of like, we should record him doing this stuff, because we, at the time it was, Grandmaster's no longer around, what are we gonna do? And we never did, because it's always one of those like, oh, I should do that, and you always forget to. And I found these, and it was just like amazing to come across and see that we had these videos of him doing all the forms. So I promised Master McCarty a copy of those. A few more people. I think I shared the link. I think I shared a link with you at some point.
Yeah, I was gonna say, did you put some of those on YouTube?
Yeah, they're up on a private. They're in a private link on YouTube, so it's not publicly accessible, just because YouTube is YouTube.
Right. Yeah.
So I always shared it to some people, to pass it along to you so they could look at them. And they said I'm putting this DVD together for to try to share with some people.
So if you're nice and you send Master Farrelly a message, he may or may not share the link with you. It's funny. It probably happened the same way with him. He probably recorded those, and at some point or another, it was like, I'll post these or I'll share these, and probably no one ever really saw them, it's just crazy.
Yeah, I think it looks like, at some point they were going to be for like an association video or something, because he, it starts off with him, him saying, I'm Master Robert Beaudoin, Secretary General of World Tongue Sudo, doing our forms, and he demonstrates all of them, which watching him do some of them, it's like I haven't seen him do that for me.
Right.
Don't often watch him do Seigen and Ilbu. It's but
that's cool. What were some of the other things that you found that either blew you away, or like, I haven't seen this in a while, or I've never seen this?
Well, some of the things I knew were there, and I talked to you about, is I grabbed both of his copies of Wang Yi's book, which you have. I know you have a copy.
Yes.
He had the English version. He also had the Korean version.
Wow.
So he had both versions of it, and I was gonna bring them today to show him, but I'm like, I don't take those out of the house. Yeah. Those are in a secure location, because those are rare items. I found at one point, tournament applications from 1984, from when Master McCarty will, speaking of him being there, he'll remember the tournament, the scholarship tournament at Crosby High School, which is right down the street. And I found tournament applications I found mine from when I was, an orange belt. I think it was an orange belt at the time. My older brother, Master Valentin.
Wow.
Madeline Valentin, Carl Jenkins, and then I think Kevin Master Totalin, and just a bunch of these, masters of World Tongue Sudo, and they're like a black belt or a red belt and that kind of thing. So that was pretty crazy, just stuff like that he had. I didn't know he still had kept those. Letters from Wang Yi.
Oh wow.
Mudokwan board of directors notes and meeting minutes, and newsletters from Grandmaster Shin that he would be sending from Korea to his American students. And yeah, we still haven't finished sorting all of it and going through it.
You said you found folders from masters clinics.
I think every master's clinic, I'm really kind of jealous because I understand why. Those early master clinics, they had really cool binders and nice binders that they got. And, we get those, those nice, paper folders,
Older,
but
yeah.
they had nice, like, tri clip binders that were, fancy art on the front.
Well, you're talking about, 25 people showing up
Yeah,
compared to hundreds at this point.
exactly. Yeah, oh, absolutely. I
The
understand the
budget.
logistics of why and the budget, but, it's like, oh man, they had really nice binders back then.
You talked about the newsletters, and I remember it when in Grandmaster Strong's book, he talked about those newsletters he would send. So that's pretty cool to hear that there's still copies out there.
Yeah, and it's funny. I was finding some different items as I was going. I would send some of it, scan something and send it to Grandmaster Strong, and he would see it, and he's like, where'd you get this? I'm like, it was Grandmaster Beaudoin's stuff, and that I've been going through. He goes, I didn't see this one at headquarters. He goes, this is one we didn't have. I'm like, sorry. He goes, did Grandmaster Beaudoin know he had it? I'm like, no, it was
Probably not.
not at all. It was in his garage in a filing cabinet in the third drawer.
Now, if you're a good martial artist or been around for a while, you have a stack of uniforms and things like that. Was there just a room of things like that, or
uniforms? Not as much. There was only a couple of those. He had a couple grandmaster belts because he had those. Like he had one always packed in his suitcase for travel, and he had one they kept to go to the studio and that kind of thing. And he had a couple of uniforms, but t-shirts was the thing. I still have in my basement that I have to do something with. I have a box of t-shirts that he got. Master Valentin got a box of t-shirts. Anthony Bracco got a box of t-shirts. Yeah, Joe. It's like, what am I going to do with all these t-shirts? Because every time he traveled, they gave him a t-shirt.
right?
When you travel 20 plus weekends a year for multiple years, that's a lot of t-shirts.
I'm sure you can figure out something. I know there's been some cool like quilts throughout the years of
Yes.
t-shirts from various people.
Yeah, he did a couple of those, and I think we're gonna try to do another one or two of those. So yeah, we just have to do something with them. It's one of those we have to figure out what to do with all of them because we have them just kind of hanging around at the moment.
Right. So tell us about a month or so ago, you sent me a message with an idea of doing an interview and just a talk like we're doing now. What was the basis? What would you like to share with us today?
So this was several years ago. We were doing, and up here, we usually before the Masters thing, we try to get together a couple of times. We used to just be a couple of times, then Master Valentin tried to push it off to being every week. Before the Masters thing, usually starting like January, try to train every week to make sure everybody's feeling good, feeling sharp, goes to the Masters thing, doesn't embarrass the region kind of thing. Everybody looks good. We used to switch it around to everybody's different studios would get a chance to host it. And we were doing it at Master Totalin's school one night. And Grandmaster Beaudoin, if he wasn't traveling, he would come. He would come to those all the time, as long as he was, as long as he was in the state. And we're doing forms, and he just starts out of the blue doing this other form, doing this one form, and he's like, I remember this form tonight. And he does like half of this form, and we're like, pretty much everybody there is like, what form's that? We've never seen that. He goes, well, I learned this, in 1960 something from Kiwon Kim in Silver Springs, Maryland. And he goes, oh, it's called Jinte. And he goes, I can't remember all of it. It's been a long time since I've done it. I haven't done it probably since the 70s. It's like, so it kicked in. It's like, wow, he perhaps forgot more forms than
right.
we know at this point, because he's done so many over the years. And so that kind of spurred me to start looking into it. And we kind of talked about it and looked into different versions and this and that. And then one night I was helping him with his computer, and he was like, oh, Dan, well, here, look at this. And he pulls out Wang Yi's book. And he scrolls to the chapter on forms, and he's like, "Oh, here, look at this." And there's the whole list of forms that Wang Yi listed as Tongsudo forms, not world, obviously not world Tongsudo, just Tongsudo forms. And one of them was this form, Jinte. And he's like, and so we started talking about it, and he's like, "Yeah, a lot of these, we kind of went back and forth, and basically a lot of them, they're in." Wang Yi listed them as Tongsudo, forms. And he's like, he goes, "I learned a lot of these or saw a lot of these." He goes, "And maybe we should try to, even if they're not World Tongsudo curriculum that are going to be required for rank, when you talked about like, let's try to find people that know a version of them or have them, and try to preserve them in some, fashion, because there's a lot of, just like again with him, there's a lot of knowledge in his head."
Mm-hmm.
That isn't documented anywhere. Like I said, we managed to find those videos of him doing the World Tongsudo forms, which is great. But this form, he didn't have he didn't know he had, if it was documented for him doing it anywhere. A bunch of these other forms he had learned or had done. And so he kind of gave me that. Again, this was several years ago. He kind of gave me that task to start looking into it, and I started looking into it slowly. And so kind of, finding different versions of them and that kind of stuff, and it kind of gave me this little quest to take this list of forms and find the ones that aren't in our curriculum, that we don't have documented, that we don't do, and and find them and preserve them in some fashion. So that's kind of what I've been doing. And there's about, right now I have 2 of them down pretty well, to at least be able to work through them, because there's a lot to both of them that's a little subtle and different, to kind of remember. So, and then the other side of it is also that there's purely from him, because I think at this point he was the only one that remembered these or had them, except maybe Master McCarty, because he learned them back then also. Is when he came to the U.S. When Grandmaster Beaudoin came back from the U.S. or came back from Korea, he was in the U.S. He was in Connecticut, he was training. Grandmaster Shin was still in Korea, because that Grandmaster Shin, didn't come till '68, and he was still messaging Grandmaster Shin back and forth. And in the, just after he had gotten back, he was in New York City, going through New York City with his wife, and he looked up and he saw the old Mudokwon fist in the wreath on a window, and so he went up there and he met Master Richard Chun, who was doing Mudokwon Tongsudo or Mudokwon Taekwondo, which that's a whole other discussion.
Right.
That the Mudokwon break and Taekwondo people and Mudokwon people that came over and started doing Taekwondo, but we're still doing Mudokwon, and that's a whole extra thing. But he was still primarily doing Tongsudo as we knew it. He was just calling it Taekwondo at the time, and he had 5 forms called the Kibun forms that he did and he developed. And if you find his book, they're actually in his book. I have the photocopies of his book that have them. But Grandmaster Beaudoin always kept those around as a set of forms that he had learned to do. I think Master McCarty probably either has the book or has done them. I know he's done them, but so we have those like 5 forms that I'm keeping and trying to keep going. I did a video on those last year, Masters Clinic weekend. What was going to be the Masters Clinic in 2020? I did a early Facebook Live video thing doing those 5 forms back then, which I probably need to redo because the audio wasn't very good. Because we were all still figuring out how to stream martial arts
Right.
at that point. Yeah, so that's kind of, so I'm trying to preserve those 5 as one set, and I'm trying to work on this other set of forms and get those documented.
Yeah, it's interesting. You talk about that book, and just, I mean, you go as far as World Tongsudo, we have what we call the Seikei Hyungs, and they would replace the Gicho Hyungs that I'm sure most Tongsudo associations still do. Yep. If you've heard the story in 1987, they got together and Grandmaster Shin, because then you basically got 4 forms in and you had not done one kick in any of your Tongsudo forms up until 7th Cup.
Yeah.
So Every once in a while I'll bust those out to the students, just again to kind of preserve and share a bit of history of Tong Soo.
Yeah, and so if you kind of look at this list, and I'm sure you can take a look at it in your copy of the book, and when you look at it, it really comes down to about there's probably like 4 categories of forms in there that you can break that list into.
I feel like I should get the book and snap a picture, and maybe I'll do that later.
Yeah, you can see that it's across 2 pages, and there's really breaks down to about 3 categories of forms, or 4 categories of forms. There's the ones that, yep, that's
Here's
the one.
Book we're talking about. Good, keep talking. I'm gonna look while you're talking.
And so, like I said, there's really 4 categories. There's the ones that we have in World Tong Soo that are really across most Tong Soo organizations. If you look at them, are the core Tong Soo curriculum. The Sigyungs or the Gichayungs, the Pyongans, the Nyanchis, Pasai, Shipsu, Jinto, Rahai, Gun, and then the master's forms like Seishan, Wanshu, Jian, Oship Sabo. That's pretty much the core of most Tong Soo. And then other groups will have the Chilsungs, the Yukuros, but those weren't. They might be in that version of the book, but I don't think so. I know they're not in the pure Korean version, because they hadn't come up with those yet when those books were published. So there's that group that's the pure, pretty much the core of Tong Soo curriculum. Then there's I want to say the auxiliary Tong Soo forms. There's a set of them that some people that seem to have, for lack of a better way to say it, been picked up or carried on by various branches of Tong Soo. Like one of Wang Yi's students will have known, this set of forms. So people that were with him or knew him or were close to that person will carry on that form and that kind of thing, like the Jin Tae that we're working on. And I think Master McCarty, hopefully he said he found a copy of that for me that he's going to send to me. That came down like the Kiwon Kim branch, like only his branch of Tong Soo or Taekwondo Tong Soo had that form with them. And it's like Chin Tae, Ji-in, So-chin, Basai So, Gunso, 2 more raw highs. So those are Iship Sabo. So there's probably 8 or 9 that are in that category that there's credible good versions of those that are out there for people. And then so that's our kind of the second set. And then there's a third set that now when you start digging into them and you look at a lot of different resources and some different books and different and that's one of the tough things. There's not a lot of good hard copy literature on Tong Soo history, the history of Tong Soo forms, because it's compared to the Japanese and Okinawans, it's significantly younger, our form curriculum, because it really doesn't start until the 50s, essentially, right after the late 40s, early 50s, right after World War II, versus the Japanese styles and the Okinawan styles that at least can go back much further than that. So our history is and there's so many people that have broken away or jumped away or gone here, gone there. There's a much more fractious environment sometimes in Tong Soo. So documenting where a form came from can be very difficult in trying to search through them. So doing research into the forms and where they came from and what they are can be really tough sometimes, because you kind of got to vet the information you're going through, because it's it's one of those things like or the old was it what was the company? It was I think it was an insurance company commercial. Oh, hey, I met this guy on the internet. He's a French model. Bonjour, and it's some
right, yeah.
Everything's true on the internet. This guy's yeah. So you got to just vet the information you're getting. If you find 2 or 3 resources that are sourced differently or that kind of thing, then I kind of start to trust it. So I found a couple of those that fill in the blank. Because if you look at that list, there's a bunch of forms that you're like, I've never heard of this one.
Yeah, I know. I'm looking at the list. I tried to figure out a way to post the picture on the comments, but I couldn't. I
Yeah.
don't know if you can really
Yeah.
uh,
Yep.
backwards
And
anyway.
yeah, I know I saw it correctly on my side, but yeah,
Oh,
that's
okay.
and the top side, um, on the next page, you get
Yeah,
into
there's another.
some of these other ones that really, when you start to research it back, they translate or map to. There's not really I haven't been able to find yet. Hopefully it is a yet. Um, Otherwise, I might just have to do some translation, some Tongsudo translation on my own. Those mostly translate and trace back to pretty much Gojuru or Shito Ryu
Okay.
forms, and they're pretty interesting and they're pretty nice. But there's so far I haven't really found any detailed versions of those in Tungsto. We can and I think with some research and some deductions, since we're talking with some different people, like Master Molinaro, I love to talk to him about this stuff because he has so much knowledge of the Okinawan styles and the Okinawan traditions that he's really good to talk about some of this with. He'll be happy that I shouted him out, though he'll never hear this, I'm sure.
I'll have to send him a link of it.
But so try to do a translation of those because it's pretty close. We can figure out some of the translations, and then that's kind of the fourth category is these ones that there's not a good translation or even any that I found so far of these Gojuru Shito Ryu forms. Then there's the fourth category, which is nobody on any place I've seen has any idea what the heck this is supposed to be. Like there's no translation that matches to a form in another style. Some of them are names of actual other styles of martial art in China. So it's like we're not really sure what this is. So it's kind of unknown. So we can't figure it out.
Wow.
So those ones I'm not gonna worry about. But I have a plan to get together with Master Carl Jenkins, who's not World Tongsudo, but he's one of Grandmaster Beaudoin's senior students who lives down near you.
Yep.
And he knows a lot of these forms because he's been a student of a lot of stuff. He has a bunch of them. So him and I are planning to get together sometime in the near future to go through these, and hopefully I'll be able to document them and get them down so I practice them. There's about I think five or six that I'm going to get with him to go over and do. And then Master McCarty has a version of Jinte to look at. Now,
He also says there's two breaking forms was from Kiwon Kim.
Oh, okay, cool. That'll be fun to see as well. That'll be great.
Yeah. Yeah, it's interesting to I don't know if I've ever looked at that list to see that there's 3 Rohais. And yeah, like see names is like I've never heard of this before, so it's interesting and great that you're doing it. Lindsay says it's brilliant. You're trying to preserve these forms. They're the type of thing we love to learn at seminars as it's Tongsudo, but it's different to what we need to learn. And yeah, it's the same thing. Master Godwin has 4 or 5 forms. Actually, there's more than that he has kind of push down the line, and I do my best to try to share. There's a form, he calls it Shibamhyung Ilbu, and then we always knew it as that, and then he told the story that it used to be called Shin Yi Hyung. So Grandmaster Shin and his original instructor Kyung Yi created it in the 70s for people to compete at tournaments. Then when he started the association, he took his name off of it. But he's like, yeah, I learned it from the name escapes me right now. Someone at headquarters, but it's just little tidbits like that. It's like, man, that's cool. And it shouldn't go away.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's like one of the forms, Sojin is an interesting form because its focus is Segalep Jase. The stance is really the thing that's working in that form, and most of the moves in the form are done in that stance. and I was practicing a little bit before this, and it's really, I won't say it's really awkward, but it's really different to do because, most of the time we don't practice that. We practice that stance so rarely, and it's almost always a transitional, it's part of a stance, and then we transition to a front stance or we transition to another position. And to try to do a lot of our technique and keep that stance in that position is really something different. But it's good in that it trains that part of your body to work on that stance, to develop a different type of power in that position, because you can't drive the full hip into it. You have to try to get a different type of hip movement and hip power into it.
Miss, what stance did you say it's in?
Segab Jase. So half kima, half front stance. You know the one I'm talking about?
I don't know if I do.
So it's, turn this back a little bit so we can actually see. It's when you do, so it's basically like,
Oh, Sako Rip Jase, yeah.
Sako Rip Jase. Yeah. New England Korean versus Delaware Korean.
Yeah, right. Yes, sir. I got you now.
Yeah, and that's the whole portion of the stance, or the not portion of the but big portion of that form is working that stance, transitioning through it, kicking from it, moving from it, getting power into it. And it comes with just a different purpose of the form. It's really to train that aspect of your technique, is to work that power and that technique in that position.
So tell me the name of the form again.
Sojin.
Sojin.
Yeah.
Were you able to find any?
It's Sochin in the Japanese styles, in like the Shotokans or the Japanese or the Okinawan styles. And when it's in the Korean, it's Sojin. And that's, if you look at it, if you look at that list that in Wangi's book, if you match them to the Japanese styles, most of the time where there's Jin, J-I-N, in Korean, it's Chin, it's C-H-I-N.
Gotcha. Which,
talking about Chin Te, made finding Chin Te a giant pain in the butt. because some people did the translation, they made it Chin or made it Jin Te, so it was J-I-N-T-E. Okay, that's pretty easy to find. But then some people also translated Te, which is hand, which is Su in Korean. So people have Jin Su some places, and then some people kept the Chin and made it Chin Su. So there's like 4 different names that people have had this form. And to make it even worse, some people have confused it with Chindo or Jindo.
Oh, right.
So you search Chin Te and you find people doing Jindo.
Yeah.
It's like, oh, no, what the?
That's
yeah.
crazy.
So finding all of the translation issues sometimes are interesting, because just like we said that same stance slightly different from each other. One of our students probably spells it one way, the other spells it differently, because they listened to what we were saying and didn't look it up. And then you get different answers to questions.
Right. Yeah. So like Jovel says, first he says hugs to Master Farrelly, Jovel, and he says Dwi Suki Jase, or is Hugu 50-50. Yeah. Yep. So you can interpret it. Yeah.
Yep.
I know that you went down the YouTube rabbit hole.
Again, as Master Molinaro calls it, the god Yotobe.
Oh, right. Yeah.
Yes, I went down the YouTube rabbit hole of trying to look these up, because there's that's the only place you're going to find video of people doing some of this stuff. And oh my God, I don't know what some of these people are thinking when they post it sometimes, but searching the different titles, you get different versions of it, different places, and you see so many variations of them. Like I've seen, looking at again Jin Te, I've seen versions that are very close to the Japanese style. I've seen ones that are very different. Like there's a signature move in the form, and I'll show that for a second. The signature move, really honestly, is You're kind of going into you're doing a block out, hook, and punch your hand. That's the kind of signature move. You do two of those, and then you do a third one where you block and you do an elbow. So it's really, that's almost the signature of that form. And there's versions of it that don't do it.
Right.
They replace it with a high block, high punch. It's like, it's a really weird change in the first place, but it's like, that's this, kind of that signature of that form is really that series of moves. It's the only place you ever see that doing it. And it's the part of the form that Grandmaster Beaudoin, he remembered. And he remembered from, that section of the form where that was going on, because it is the kind of that signature. And again, you see people that don't have it or don't do it, or it's like, it's very interesting what happens in when you start going down those rabbit holes of looking at how people do and what people do.
Well, it's just like with the Pyongans or the Heians, or someone will come in and be like, "Oh, I found the Pyongyang on YouTube," and I go,
and they do Pyongyang Shodan.
Oh, well, I'll immediately say, "Show me the video," or "Who did you find it?" And they'll be like, "Oh, I found it. It was Legacy Martial Arts." It's like, okay, perfect. I'm fine with that. Or, it's like, well, that's not quite how we do it, but it's close.
Well, the real danger is that if they find Pinan Idan,
Right,
which is the Okinawan version,
correct,
that's actually our Pinan Shodan, because Funakoshi switched them.
Right.
Because he made the easier one first, which honestly makes sense.
Yeah.
But we had a student come in who had done Okinawan, and he's like, and we told him the form, and he started doing the other one. And we're like, yeah, that's opposite for us. You gotta switch that. Yeah, and that's you can find that as well too. Sure. Doing it from there.
So, would you like to give us a little taste of this form?
Yeah, I can do that one. I can do that one. The other one that I've been working on, which I could also do, is G-In, which is a partner to Jian. They're related, and it's actually, there's some debate, because there's always debate with forms, form history, form knowledge of. They're also partnered with Shipsu, because Shipsu can be written as Jite or Jitte, Jitte.
Right.
Because they all have that same starting position. They have some similar techniques. So I'll do a Sochin first. I'm gonna not gonna go like full bore power, because
take your time.
People can't see it. I'm really working on how this position, how you get into it really well. But I'll try to do it at least relatively close to the speed it should be.
Okay.
But I'm gonna take my headset off. I'll probably tilt the camera down a little bit so hopefully people aren't looking at the ceiling. But yeah, I'll try. I'll do. I can do that one right now.
Okay, cool. Very nice. You can see elements from so many different forms in there.
Yeah,
It's like the best of.
but really trying to keep that stance
Yeah.
is such a challenge because we're so trained to. I hate myself because anytime I even try to go easy, I still.
Yeah,
I
no,
still
you don't need give yourself a second to catch your breath.
Well,
Yeah, it's thank you for sharing that. You know, I love doing stuff like this. It's one of those, and we still have people watching, and usually I nerd out, but like this is like major karate nerd out today. And I love that people are still watching and are hopefully appreciating what you're sharing, because you know I could talk about stuff like this all the time.
oh yeah, absolutely.
What part of this was this mostly like you obviously saw him do some of this? Were you able to practice this with him at all, or was this all learned by video?
There's a little bit with this one. He didn't have this one down.
Okay.
He might have. I didn't come across this one in searching until, unfortunately, he had passed. Grandmaster had passed away. Jin and Jinte, he had shown me some of what he remembered of Jinte, and him and I had done Jin a few times together. But this one I hadn't found until after, unfortunately, after he passed away, found some Tongsudo versions of him. The tough part with that form really is getting that stance, because just the almost the muscle memory of going into a front stance or wanting to be in a fighting stance when doing a certain technique and focusing on that other position is so challenging because we're just so hardwired to do it.
Yeah, you could see that it could almost benefit from a different stance, but obviously they were using that form to drill and to train a specific kind of set. What a lot of people don't know is, if you look back, take the Nebojin, the Hanchi, they were considered a style. Like that form was basically the curriculum of that style that person, created and taught their instructor or their students.
Yeah, and it kind of comes back to the concept of the purpose of Hyung. And and Bunkai is a big is a big flashy term that a lot of people really like to talk about, like to do. But I'm an engineer. I do engineer and programming by trade, so I try to want to go with the simplest solution to things most of the time. And a lot of times, some of the forms are designed to train specific aspects of our art. They're not necessarily trained or designed or practiced, to be an ultimate self-defense move. They're not, this form, if you're doing some reading and some research on it, really purpose is to train and develop power and strength of that stance. And the other forms on the list in there that Grandmaster Beaudoin and I started really researching and talking about is Sanchin. And Sanchin, if you've ever heard of it, is almost a bedrock form of a lot of the Okinawan styles. Don't search for it on YouTube unless you want to see a lot of old Okinawan men practicing without their shirts on, because it's I don't know why, but there's a lot of guys who practice this form that are old Okinawan men doing it with no shirts on. I don't know why. Actually, part of it is because it's supposed to be it's a power development form. It's an internal power development. It's almost the Qigong kind of thing, but it's very tense power, very driven breathing, very focused. So I imagine part of it having without the shirt on, it's to show for people to see how much you're tensing all of your muscles in it. it's a very intense form to do. And we had a student here who got his black belt, went to Okinawa, was doing teaching English in Okinawa kind of thing. And he started training, he got his black belt with us. He started training in Okinawan styles. And he learned it there. And he came back 2018, I want to say, around then. And he came in and he did that with us. Grandmaster Beaudoin did it. And we started pulling it in off that list. And Grandmaster Beaudoin, I think it was one of the last Christmas gifts I'd gotten him was actually a book on Sam Shin and how it's almost key development, because you do the technique and it's a very, if you look at it, it could, and again, if we watch some of the versions of it that you see, some of them look really, really bad, because I think some people miss the point of the form in that it's supposed to be a very slow, very power-driven form, but it's not flashy, it's not fancy. So unless you're really trying to focus on that development, it's like the first move, you get into a modified fighting stance essentially. But the first two move is you do like a double block kind of out like this, but you're supposed to be breathing the whole time, and you're almost, you know how you see some people doing shipsu, they do that first move and their hand is like shaking,
right?
Because they're being tense. That's the same portion of this move. The first move is you're doing that tension here, and then you pull the hand back, and you do the same thing. You're pulling it back, pulling it back. Then you breathe out as you're punching. It's all that slow tension. You're just tightening up every single muscle of your body. If you've missed that lesson, when you watch some people do it, you can tell some people probably miss that portion of the lesson where they're supposed to be tense, they're supposed to be working, and they just go. And it looks like you missed the point of that form. The point of the form is, there's not really a deeper self-defense meaning to this form. The purpose of this form is, internal development, power development, breathing development, and building yourself that way. So it's a different purpose to the form. I think Sochin kind of has that same kind of thing. A big portion of it is learning how to develop power and movement with this stance. That especially in Tongsudo, I think be a very useful form for us, because we don't use that stance very often. It's in a couple times in a couple of forms, right? Maybe 3 or 4 places in forms.
Right. You were talking about that, and I remember times where I got to train with Grandmaster Beaudoin, and he was working shipsu, and he would talk about that move, and you see people and they'll pop it at the end, and he would always talk about it being like a very dynamic and stop, right? And you're working on a specific move. There's no attack at the end, right?
Yep,
you're working on and you're working on tensing your muscles, and then the next move is fast, right? And then you go fast, and same thing at the end, press. There's no pop at the end. It's press and stop. Yep. So whenever I do that form, I think of him and the details, because it's like, that's right. That makes a lot of sense, and I only got to work with him a handful of times, but I always got something. It's like, man, I've latched onto it, and I've pushed forward on sharing that information, just on those little details. Yeah, even if it's just one move in a form.
Yep, and that was, he had those little spots in the form. Like, it was funny. It was like in Pasai, he would always say in Pasai, you want, when you do the move, because there were some people who were doing it like this, and he was like, no, you want the hands, because this hand is pushing to you, this hand's pushing away, and you're getting that power. And because some people just kind of like put their hands together and they're like, oh, that's going to stop something. When you think about it, it's like, well, no, that's pretty wobbly if you have your fingers on your wrist but if you get palm to palm, push up, push down, that makes very solid power. And the people, you show it to people, and they're like, oh, suddenly that move makes sense now. Now I feel like I can actually stop something if it comes at me with that technique. Or why am I'm doing that?
Master Godwin always is like, you want to frame it. You're setting a frame for that move. And that always stuck with me. Master Benelli says greetings from Region 23 for both of you masters. Tung Su. Tung Su, sir. Hopefully we'll see you sometime next year. Same with you, Jove. So what was the other form that you wanted to share? Believe it or not, we got about 10 minutes left in our hour. So I want to get to anything else that you wanted to share. So
yeah, I could do G in. And again, this is very simple. It's related to Jian and potentially Pasai, or not Pasai, Shipsu. It's in the JI forms. It's kind of a lesser known form. It's interesting in that if you kind of research it, it's not an official form under the Japanese karate associations or for tournaments anymore, because just the various rabbit holes you go down to finding these things, because it paros with the wrong leg. So apparently, if you're doing a form in that in that curriculum for tournaments of that style of that organization, all the forms have to paro the same way. It's also, and they also have to start and stop in the same position. And that's actually in Jinte. At the end of it, there's these 3 hop back, which I'm not sure if the Tongsto version of it is, but the Japanese versions have these 3 hop backs. And everyone's like, why do they do that? And one of the predominant versions of why it happens is to line up back to your start position.
Gotcha.
And there's a really good set of videos on YouTube of an old Japanese Shotokan master doing all these forms, and you see him, and the forms start. There's like an X on the floor where he starts in front of, and he ends dead center every time. And when he finishes that form, you see him do the 3 hop backs, and he ends right there. So it's like, that's interesting. And then when you watch Ji-in, paro is the opposite way, or the opposite leg. And so it's like, oh, well, it's disqualified because it doesn't end the right way. It's like, oh, that's an interesting reason for it not to be part of an official curriculum, because it's focused on, the tournament, setup and stuff. But like I said, this is Jian. It's related to Jian, related to Shipsu. It's kind of it's a nice form. It has a lot of things that build into it. That it has a couple nice little moves. So I'll pop back and I'll do this one as well.
Okay. All right. I found out I pinned you on that one the last time I didn't. So that you got a better view of the form. That's, again, cool form. It seems like it goes right along with all the other ones that we do in our curriculum. I'm assuming, because again, you look at that list, and I mean, how many forms are on that list? It's a lot. At some point, so there's 16 on one page and 11, 23 on the other page. So at some point you gotta pick and choose.
No, absolutely, and it's understandable to pare it down, but I'm sure you see it. And Grandmaster Beaudoin always talks about is, we got to fill in sometimes in, especially in the black belt ranks sometimes,
Right.
because those times get so long.
Yep.
That sometimes we need to just, we would use the key buttons or an extra staff form or something like that. I know you guys use some extra stuff like that as well to kind of fill in some of those ranks to give the black belt something more to do. Like, I feel bad for Chodans sometimes because they get Nyan Chidan has a lot to learn in there. I was teaching it the other night and I was pulling out some stuff that I got from Master Haney, who had so much knowledge, and it was such a shame that he was regional director, so for a long time he didn't get to teach, and when you're the regional director, you don't get to teach as much, and he had so much knowledge to share, such little tidbits all the time. And I managed to get some time with him and get a bunch of those. Lauren got a lot, Colin got a lot.
I have an idea about that. I was thinking about a way to get your wife to do an interview with me, and I'll share with you later.
Sounds good.
If we put the two of them together, maybe.
We might be able to, if we get them both there. She might do it for Colin. And I was just posting out some little knowledge of Nyanchi Edon that he was passing along that I had gotten one time to our Chodans. But you think about it, they get Nyanchi Edon, they get Bongyong Sabu. It's like, or Sambu, sorry, not Sabu.
Right.
Sambu. It's like, okay.
Well, now they get 21 to 31 steps now.
Yeah, they do get the 1 steps as well, which is nice, but it's like, and there's only like, up until, Edons have, at least 3 years and they get 3 forms. It's like,
right.
Maybe, I think some of these are useful to at least have in the back pocket to bust out and share with those people, or to use to develop some of these other skills and other knowledge and movements of our technique. There's a lot to them in that way. I think a lot of potential for filling in some stuff and some gaps sometimes for some of our higher rank, because
I know, do Sekyung Yolbu for the 1,000th time. Now, that being said, practice basics all the time is what Grandmaster Shin always talked about. But
yep, absolutely.
You also have to keep, teens. You got to keep them on the hook.
You got for everybody. That's always the thing. When you stop looking and stop learning and stop researching, moving forward, that's the thing that kills people. You have to have something to progress in some fashion, to learn in some fashion, to grow in some fashion. You can keep practicing what you learned before, and you can always find more in there. Because I'll pull out Molinaro one more time, because he always says it's like a circle. You start here, you learn something, you perfect something. Oh, now you figure something else out from having perfected this thing. Now you got to learn it again, perfect again. It keeps going around, and you can do that. But throwing something new in the mix gives you something else to churn through and work through it and look at. And that's been kind of the fun thing with this project, is there's so many, learning all these different, where the forms come from, who did them, who had them, where you can get them. Just looking at the Japanese forms, the Okinawan forms, there's so much we can pull into Tongsu of how we move, how we generate power, how we develop our technique. Because I know I heard it constantly after the Olympics. I'm sure you heard it too from students and people who watch the forms in the Olympics. How do they get that fast? How do they get that strong? Oh my God, they're so sharp, so crisp. Well, practice, and they are Olympic athletes, so yeah, they better be like that. They're the best in the world. They better look that good. But
you hear the secret? They're probably practicing 6 to 7 hours a day.
that too, and but hopefully no chemical enhancements either. But that's a different story. But how do we take some of that knowledge and that ability and history that they have and incorporate it into our own stuff to grow and make us better? How do we learn from just the way they do a move and apply it to our techniques and how we do them and make our techniques stronger and better?
Awesome. Master Jared Artika says Tongsu brothers, and then he said slick on your form. So you got if Jared gives you a I hold Jared in high regard as far as technicians go in our association. So
He is pretty sharp. He was right in front of me my first year at Master's Clinic. So that was he was the second year my first year. So having him in front of me, I'm like, oh good, I'm gonna, no matter what I do, I'm gonna look bad having him in front of me. So I'm not worried at this point.
it's funny with everything that's gone on this, the past couple of years with the pandemic. I've known Jared for years, but between you and him are like two guys that I've talked to more, and he's great because he'll just like send me a text message like, hey, can I bounce stuff off you, and we go back and forth and share ideas, and it's just reminds me of the resources that we have. If we reach out, like everyone is willing to help and share as you have shared today. It's awesome.
Oh, absolutely. It's great. And that's the way to go through some of these and work on some of these, is we have to share them and be them. Because if I keep them to myself, I had an English teacher in high school, because one of those random life lessons that you get, in life that you always remember. And we were discussing, I don't remember what it was. Oh, it was Macbeth. We were talking about Macbeth, and he wanted to play us instead of watching whichever version of Macbeth, he put on a version of Macbeth that was done in Japan, I think by Akira Kurosawa. I think it was called Throne of Blood.
Interesting.
And we're watching it at the time. I was getting very into Japanese swords and Japanese styles and that kind of stuff a little bit, learning about it. And it showed the Macbeth character and his second in command. And in the hierarchy of Japanese weapons, there's it's like sword, spear, bow. It's kind of like the hierarchy. The higher you are, the different weapons you would carry in the Japanese military. And the Macbeth character was carrying a bow, and his next in command was carrying a spear. And after class, I went up and I said something to the teacher, and the teacher was just like, he's like, Dan, why didn't you share that with the class? Because that's a very interesting point that they got that right in the movie. And it's a piece of knowledge. He goes, if you have knowledge like that, you should always, you should share it and let people know, because it doesn't do any good for you just to know it. If we don't share what we have, it doesn't do anybody any good. I could be like, ooh, I got the knowledge.
Right.
but what does it matter at that point when I'm, not here? Then that knowledge goes away. If I share and we share it with each other, then hopefully that will get carried forward and passed on and preserved in some fashion.
Yeah, and I mean, even if it was a small nugget that Grandmaster Beaudoin shared with you, it sparked that interest and desire to research it and learn it. So I thank you for taking the time out and joining me today and sharing honestly a bit of our Tungsudo history outside of the association and kind of the roots and really nerding out on karate.
Absolutely, my pleasure. And again, and I'm still in the early stages of this, I think. So there's gonna be lots more that I'm gonna come across, and I'm sure I'll be sharing with you in some fashion a lot of this that I get and find and talk about. So, hopefully stay tuned for more in the future.
I feel like at this point we have to do a yearly interview, since this is going to be tradition at this point. So
it sounds good to me.
All right. Thank you everyone for watching, and we'll see you later. Tongsu.